The roommate was kissing a junior and was caught by his girlfriend on the spot. He disagreed and said, "Robert, who else would want an old, fierce Omega like you except me? If you dare to hit James, we will break up now." The roommate was sure that Robert looked too rough and no one would like him. I watched the Omega slam the door and leave, patted my roommate's shoulder, stood up with a smile and said, "You play first, I'll go see my sister-in-law." That night, Robert suddenly had a fever, and the dark-skinned 1.80-meter tall man's face was flushed. I hung up my roommate's call with one hand. "Brother, John doesn't like your type, but I do." At a birthday party. Amidst screams and cheers, birthday boy James kissed John on the lips. Their kiss deepened. Finally, they hugged each other and kissed passionately. I was leaning on the sofa playing with my phone, lowering my head and posting a circle of friends. I had a lot of fun tonight. The picture is a selfie I just took. The composition is very casual. It shows my handsome face and the two people kissing behind me in 360 degrees without any blind spots. Settings, visible to only one person. After the post was successfully published, I turned off my phone with a smile. Said to John, who just separated from James, "Brother, you are awesome." 30 minutes later, the door of the box was violently kicked open. A group of black-clad thugs filed in. Robert came in aggressively and grabbed John by the collar. "I'll give you 3 seconds to explain why you kissed someone else." John was confused. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he scratched his hair and said irritably, "Can you please stop making such a fuss? It's a friend's birthday, we were just joking." "Are you kidding?" Robert sneered. He also kicked over the table in the box, and the fruit plate and wine splashed everywhere. "Your fucking lips are all thready from kissing. Are you telling me you're kidding?" No one in the room had ever seen such a ferocious Omega. Everyone was shocked for a moment and dared not speak. "It's my fault, don't blame John." James dodged and blocked John's way. He said pitifully, "I knew that my senior had a boyfriend, but I still made a birthday wish for a kiss from him. If you want to blame someone, blame me, not him, okay?" Robert said bluntly, "Who are you, you bitch? Do you think I dare not hit you?" "Robert!" John pulled James behind him. "Can you stop being such a nagging woman? I was just kidding. Today is James' birthday. If you really dare to hit him, we will break up now." "Honestly, Robert, who else would want an old, fierce Omega like you except me?" I sucked the juice. Hearing this, he chuckled. "Don't say that, sister-in-law. There are still many people who like this type of him." Hearing this, Robert looked over. I was stunned. "Put down your crossed legs." Heh, if someone really liked him, he wouldn't be 27 or 28 years old and still be unloved. John sneered. "Not only does he look fierce, but he also has a bad temper. Ask yourself, am I not tolerant enough towards you?" Privately, John often complained to us in the dormitory, saying Robert always eats young grass. He dislikes Robert's age. But he also enjoys the fact that the other person only has eyes for him. And almost luxurious material conditions. Robert looked mockingly. "Okay, you like gentleness, right?" I thought he was going to beat up the dog man soon. But he only tilted his head slightly. He asked his younger brother to light a cigarette for him, and then he stood there and smoked it slowly. "I will make it happen for you. But remember, from today on, don't show up in front of me. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't be able to help but kill you." Robert turned around and left with his men. I watched him pass by me. Eyes follow. But he didn't look at me again. John said in disbelief, "What do you mean? Are you breaking up with me just because of this?" Robert didn't even look back and walked away quickly. John was so angry that he kicked the can at his feet away. "Fuck, you're showing off again. Calm down." I handed him a bottle of green tea drink. Robert was just impulsive, it's okay. "Calm down? Why should I calm down?" John said confidently. "In the past when we quarreled, he always begged me to comfort him." John plopped down on the couch. "Just wait and see. You have to come back to me within 3 days. I won't leave him alone for a week this time." I smiled and glanced at James, who had red eyes. She said sympathetically, "Today is James' birthday. You should comfort him. I picked up my coat and stood up. I'll go see my sister-in-law and say a few good words for you. Thanks, Michael. John cursed. Damn it, if I find out who told Robert, I'll beat him to death. Before walking out of the box, I looked back again. James burst into tears. John was at a loss as to what to do to comfort him. Please don't cry, I'll ask him to apologize to you later. James threw himself into his arms. John paused. In the end, it was not pushed open. When I found Robert, he was drinking in the bar. Are you okay? I asked. Robert didn't even look at me. He tilted his head back and gulped down a glass of rum. His Adam's apple rolled and he uttered a word neatly. Roll. I was slightly confused. What's wrong, Robert? Stop pretending to be a good person here. Robert said, what kind of person can play with John? I thought to myself, I'm really not a good person. I just want to steal other people's talents. I dropped my eyes. Robert, don't say that to me. Robert sneered when he heard this. He turned his head and his sharp eyes fell on me. I don't believe you didn't cover for him. Do you know what it means that birds of a feather flock together? If you can hang out with a scumbag, you're not much better. I took out my cell phone. I clicked on the circle of friends that was visible to only one person. This circle of friends is sent to you. I said expressionlessly. I've noticed that John and James are having an affair for a long time. I've tried to remind you many times, but you never paid attention to me. I asked you out, but you didn't respond. It was only after you had a fight with John that you remembered me as a tool and asked me to pass on your message. The more I say, Robert's expression became more and more stunned. Robert, you can dislike me, but you can't say I'm a scumbag. After I said that, I turned and left. He said impatiently, okay, I misunderstood you. I brushed his hand away. It's okay, brother doesn't like me, I will never bother you again. Robert said fiercely, I didn't say I didn't like it. Me, anyway, I'm just a tool, I don't deserve a reply. You. Robert couldn't help but said, okay. Can't I get back to you later? He said as he pulled out his phone. In front of me, set my WeChat to the top. When he swiped to John halfway, he blocked and deleted him. I watched this scene. The corners of his lips were slightly out of control. 7. Robert asked me to sit down and have a few drinks with him. I ordered a glass of watermelon juice. Robert's eyebrows twitched and finally sneered silently. I've never seen such a well-behaved alpha. I said, Robert, you know I'm not well. Robert seemed to have just remembered something, took a sip of wine, and said nothing more. Soon, 2 hours passed. Robert was slumped over the table, completely drunk. I held my head up. I listened quietly to his inarticulate curse words for a while. Finally, he helped him up and said, Brother, I'll take you back. Robert is very tall. Estimated to be about 1.86 meters tall. His strong body leaned against me. The scorching heat came towards me through the fabric of my clothes. There is a faint scent of coffee beans in the nose. Robert's face turned slightly red and his breathing became rapid. Then I realized it was not an illusion. Robert is in heat. When I took Robert home, he was already hot all over. Abnormal flushing of the face. After entering the house, Robert's tone became bad again. You better leave now. Then he ignored me. He eagerly rummaged through the drawers at home. I stood aside and watched him rummaging through the drawers. But all he found was an empty box of inhibitor. How often Robert uses suppressants? John probably never touched him once? Want to go out and buy some? I spoke. But at this time, most drug stores are probably closed. Robert panted, leaned back on the sofa and said nothing. But veins bulged on the back of his hands. Obviously he had endured a lot. I smelled the coffee bean pheromones floating around the room and leaned against the door frame with my arms folded. See Robert looking over. I blinked and asked innocently, What's wrong, bro? Do you need help? Robert loosened his tie impatiently. Pointing at the door, he said, Get out. So what are we going to do tonight? This is none of your business. After a moment of silence, I smiled. That's right, It's not me that bro likes. I called John. John, Robert is in heat. John's tone was very proud. Why, he regretted it so soon? Just let him pick up a random guy on the street to have sex with. I guess the homeless guy won't despise him. James whispered, Senior, is this really okay? John snorted. I don't know if he really wants to break up. Even if he was really in heat, no alpha would be willing to touch him. With a beep, the phone was hung up. I asked slowly, Brother, you really don't want me to help you? It's just a temporary mark, it's okay. Robert looked at me. His breathing became heavier, but he didn't speak. In a long silent confrontation, I gradually understood the other party's stubbornness. So he nodded and said, Okay. I turned around and put my hand on the door handle. Suddenly, a hot body bumped into me from behind. Robert held me tightly. His nose buried in the edge of my gland, sniffing deeply and madly. Before I even went to music school, I changed violin teachers once. That day, the teacher who was always elegant and well-mannered collapsed to the ground. With a dazed look on his face, he knelt at my feet like a dog, constantly begging for my mark. Afterwards, the teacher was fired. My mother told me that my pheromone is datura. This flower is poisonous. If you smell it for too long, your heart rate will speed up and you will have hallucinations. As a result, one is deeply immersed in bliss and cannot extricate oneself. The clothes gradually scattered all over the floor. I looked at Robert's body. In surprise, she exclaimed, Brother, you have such a beautiful figure. Robert is the sexiest omega I have ever seen. He has 8-pack abdominal muscles. The chest muscles are fuller and full of tension. What's more, this man always looks fierce. Whenever he puts on a suit, he gives people the feeling of a suit thug. Brother, John doesn't like your type, but I do. I held up Robert's face as he sniffed me. Smiling, she asked, Do you want it? He responded by tackling me. Stop talking nonsense and come. 11. The moment the tooth pierces the gland. Robert's pupils were out of focus. Then I was overwhelmed by overwhelming desire. His hands were shaking and he began to tear my clothes off recklessly. John, who had been nonchalant before, suddenly received a call at this time. Robert, you blocked me? I know your situation very well. Alpha hasn't helped you relieve the pain for so many years. The effect of the inhibitors has long been negligible for you. Will you die if you give in to me? I chuckled when I heard that. There was no deliberate attempt to disguise the volume. John heard it and his tone suddenly changed. Is there anyone with you? Where are you? Speak. Robert, where are you? Unfortunately, Robert's attention is entirely on me at the moment. So he was impatient. Let me hang up the phone for him. After all, it is more important to do the right thing. The next period of time. Very long. A certain omega was so strong that he almost broke the bed apart. And all I could think about was, Robert is awesome. Robert is awesome. Robert is so funny. My chest was compressed and contracted in extreme pleasure. Breathing became increasingly difficult and I was so excited that I had asthma. Robert was stunned. Then he covered my mouth with his palm to relieve my excessive breathing. Are you feeling uncomfortable again? I'll go slower. I looked at him with moist eyes. An uncontrollable laugh escaped from his throat. Ha ha ha. Robert suppressed doubt. What are you laughing at? Don't laugh, hold your breath. It was midsummer of my sophomore year. I suddenly had an asthma attack and fell down at the school gate, coughing violently and awkwardly. The people around were surprised, but did not dare to step forward. Coincidentally, Robert, who was sending John back to school, found me. He carried me on his back easily. He took a step with his long legs and ran quickly to the infirmary. At that time, I lay on his muscular back. I could smell the faint scent of coffee beans on the back of his neck. I thought, why isn't he mine? I want him to be mine. When I opened my eyes the next day, the pillow is empty. It was clearly Robert's home, but the owner was nowhere to be seen. I glanced at my slippers and my fallen tie. Detected traces of his escape. Turn around again. There was a stack of cash neatly stacked on the bedside table. To show sincerity, Robert even bet a gold watch on it. I came to find Robert with my guitar on my back. This guy has the temperament of a local gangster. In fact, he is a big shot in the real estate industry. But according to the information I have found, he did make his fortune in his early years by hanging out in society. Therefore, even if one has achieved success and fame, it is difficult to change the bandit nature around him. He kept a group of subordinates working in the bar under his name. The yellow-haired guy at the door saw me, turned around and shouted inside, "Boss, that pretty boy Alpha is here again." Looking through the glass door. Robert at the bar was visibly shocked. Then he hurriedly ran out of the back door. The whole process took no more than 3 seconds. Huang Mao had a messy expression and scratched his head in embarrassment. Our boss isn't here, how about you come next time?" "No," I said calmly, "please tell him that I will wait for him at the back street of the school at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. Please tell him. Whether he comes or not, I will keep waiting." 15. Back to the dormitory. I happened to see John calling Robert. He used his roommate's cell phone to call them in turn. But none of them worked. John yelled, "Fuck," in frustration. Then asked me, "Michael, didn't you go to see Robert yesterday? Did you see who he was with?" "No." "Really? Then why didn't you answer my call?" I put the violin bag on the table with the blank expression. "I went somewhere else to play, so I didn't hear it." John thought about it for a moment. His expression became relaxed again. I knew it. He was really trying to provoke me last night. "If you don't answer the phone now, isn't he playing hard to get and waiting for me to find him?" I've never seen an Omega act like this. I got into bed and quickly closed the curtains. "Stop talking fucking. You're noisy." John was stunned. He yelled from below, "You came back with a cold face, who pissed you off?" I put on my headphones and ignored him. 16. The next day, I arrived at the agreed location and started waiting for people. The weather forecast says it will rain today. I know, but still no umbrella. I waited from 7 to 9, but Robert didn't come. I stood in the pouring rain. He was drenched like a drowned rat with an expressionless face. Since I was a child, I have always been in poor health. It rained for 2 hours. My body temperature has already been lost. I knew I would soon have a high fever. But I am sure that Robert will come. "Are you crazy?" "Dezokloki sharpi." Robert rushed to me holding an umbrella. He cursed fiercely, "Are you a fucking idiot? If you don't come, are you going to keep pouring like this? You fucking..." The next second I saw what was in my hand. Robert's voice disappeared instantly. I held up the simple little pendant and said in a hoarse voice, "This is the amulet you prayed for John last year." He thought it was useless and threw it into the trash can. I picked it up and have kept it until now. Now, it's time to return it to you. 17. The rain dripped down my fingers. The amulet was already soaked. Robert's pupils trembled and he took the pendant in a daze. His face had a complicated expression. "Why are you?" And I just looked at him wetly. "Brother, is my liking too much for you? But I chose to be friends with John in the first place just to be close to you." Robert was completely confused. He seemed to be stumped by some epic problem. His handsome, strong features were wrinkled in disbelief. He reached into his pocket and took out his cigarette case. Then he realized he didn't have time to smoke, so he put it back awkwardly. "Fuck, what the hell is going on?" So I completely lost my expression. "Nothing. Just think of the words I said to you in bed as love. I'm not in my right mind. Forget it." I turned and left. "Robert?" He reached out subconsciously. I walked so fast that Robert only touched the corner of my clothes. Robert's voice was a little panicked. "Michael?" I didn't look back. That night, I started to have a fever at 10 o'clock. It wasn't until 6 in the morning that I took a fever-reducing pill. My weak physical condition made me sick and bedridden. I lay in the dormitory for 3 days and 3 nights. Because I can't look at my phone. Also unable to answer phone calls. So I don't know. Robert came to school to see me for 3 consecutive days. 19. Tisk, here it comes again. John walked into the dormitory carrying a bag of snacks. He said smugly, "I knew that the old man couldn't stand it for a few days and would come back to beg me again." Lindsay in the dormitory was playing games and asked, "Robert, didn't you break up with him a long time ago?" John, "I wanted to break up, but he insisted on pestering me. What can I do?" Lindsay, "Oh, I thought you were with someone else." James from the vocal department. John choked, but he didn't refute, but shook the plastic bag in his hand. "Would you like to eat the snacks James bought for me?" Both roommates said they didn't want to eat. John then opened my bed curtains again and lectured me, "Michael, you are too fragile. It's just a small cold that won't heal in 3 days. It's because your family is too rich and you are spoiled. If it were me, I would take a pill and get better immediately." I slowly moved my eyes towards him. "You just said, Robert came to see you?" John acted like a scumbag and said nonchalantly, "He came, but I ignored him. I said I would leave him alone for a while." I closed my eyes. The cell phone rang again on the table. John glanced at it and suddenly sneered. "Look, you found your phone and came here." He picked up the phone and said, "Robert, are you annoying?" 20. The phone was silent for a moment. Robert's deep voice came from the phone. "Where's Michael?" John said sarcastically, "Don't bother looking for Michael. He has a fever and has been lying in bed for 3 days. He doesn't have time to pass on your message. Just tell me what you want to say." Robert's voice suddenly rose. "What? Sick for 3 days?" John frowned, wanting to say something else. I don't want to listen to any more conversation between these two. So he snatched the phone and put it to his ear. Robert called several times on the phone. My nose suddenly felt sore. He said hoarsely, "I hate you." Robert on the other side paused. Breathing suddenly became heavier. "Michael, I hate you." After saying these 4 words, I hung up the phone. 21. After I recovered from my illness, I resumed my classes as normal. I haven't left school for several days. The rosin for maintaining the violin is used up and I have to go out and buy some more. I just walked out of the school gate. Then I saw a group of strong men in black squatting on the side of the road, suspected to be a gang gathering. One of the yellow-haired guys saw me and jumped up excitedly and shouted, "Fuck, I finally found you." He came up quickly and grabbed me. "Brother, I'm calling you brother. Can you please stop fishing? You've almost turned our boss into a black carp. He has no appetite now. He even wakes up suddenly and says, 'Damn you, you made us stay here every day just to see you. Stop it, brother. If you ignore him, the boss will go crazy.'" 22. I heard that. All he said was, "Oh, it's none of my business." Then turn around and leave. Went out for a leisurely shopping trip. When I came back, I was suddenly pulled into an alley. The man in front of me had a slicked back hair and was wearing a well-tailored high-end suit. Looks like they just finished a business talk. "I called you so many times and sent you so many messages, but you didn't reply to any of them." "Robert, what do I want you to pay attention to me?" I lowered my eyes and didn't look at him. "What will happen if I answer it? I'm sick, and you're still obsessed with John. I don't want to like you anymore." Robert's eyes widened and he started speaking. "Who the hell is obsessed with him? John said that. Fuck, I didn't do it to him purely because he was young and I didn't want to make a fuss. If someone else cheated on me and was so arrogant, I would just chop him to death. I feel better. But not completely. So I remain indifferent. Okay, got it. It's okay, I'm leaving now." "Robert?" He pulled me back again and blocked me against the wall. "What's the meaning? If you don't like me, don't come to me." Robert seemed very anxious. "You don't know me well enough, so you say you like me. Can't we just be friends first?" "It's okay, it's because my brother doesn't like me enough, I understand," I said and was about to leave again. Robert's Adam's apple rolled. He got mad and said, "Okay, I'll do whatever you want." "Don't you know what I want?" I looked back at him, then slowly approached step by step. "I don't want to force you. I just like my brother too much. This is the first time I like someone so much, brother. Can you promise me?" Meeting my eyes. Robert's Adam's apple rolled. He turned his head away inexplicably, his voice stammering. Okay, let's give it a try. 23. First date. Robert took me to a high-end shopping mall. He pointed to the countless luxury items and said, "Pick what you want." So I was sure. Robert has never had a real relationship. I carefully selected a men's watch and paid for it myself. Then, in Robert's astonished eyes, put it on him personally. "I've used up my allowance for this month. I'll buy you the best next time." Robert opened his mouth but said nothing. His expression was slightly tipsy. He waved his hand and said directly to the salesgirl, "Wrap up all the watches he just looked at." I grabbed him and said, "Huh? What?" "I don't know." Robert frowned and said, "I just really want to spend money on you now." "No, I will feel bad if my brother spends so much money on me." I kissed Robert on the cheek, looking at him, smiling sweetly. "If you want to thank me, this will do. The tea is a bit strong." The next day, Robert donated more than 100 air conditioners to the school. Just because I casually said that the school classroom was stuffy, I got a rash from the heat. When I returned to the dormitory, John was being flattered by his roommates. "Awesome, we all benefit from you this time. The boss donated more than 100 air conditioners to coax you. John has a brilliant record." John waved his hands pretentiously. "Ah, it's too charming, there's nothing I can do." I walked in with a smile. Asked casually, "Are you sure he donated it for you?" "John, what else? You didn't see how anxious he was after being left out by me for so long." "Me? Well, as long as you are happy." "Of course I am happy. When he comes to see me at school again, I don't mind getting along with him." John was so proud that he said, "That's what it means. Give a slap and then give a sweet treat. Let's learn this, brothers." I just smiled and said nothing. "Roberto Willindide come. Just came to see me." 24. On Saturday, Robert picked me up in a Maybach. We went on a date for a day. He sent me back to school in the afternoon, and he seemed to be still reluctant to leave. He called me back after I had walked a few steps and kissed me through the car window. "See you tomorrow, brother." Robert's eyes were burning. I used the new name I taught him today and said, "Well, see you tomorrow, baby." I walked back to the dormitory while thinking about tomorrow's plans. John suddenly rushed out and punched me. "Michael, how dare you steal my people?" I recovered from the severe dizziness. Then he wiped the blood from the corner of his lips and smiled. Robert begged me to help him that night. How could I just sit there and do nothing? Since I marked him, I have to take responsibility. John's face twisted. He rushed forward more fiercely, but was stopped by James. "John, don't be impulsive. You will be punished for fighting." James turned his head and scolded me. "Michael, do you have any shame? John treats you as a brother, but you treat him as a mistress." I said innocently, "But only those who are not loved are mistresses. Robert loves me very much." John blushed immediately upon hearing this. "I know. You were the one who told Robert about James' birthday, right? Don't stop me. I'm going to beat this bastard to death today. I'm going to kill him." Unfortunately, his hand just touched my collar. The whole person was kicked away. Robert held my face anxiously and checked it. "Are you okay? Come on, I'll take you to the hospital." John stumbled to his feet. With red eyes, he shouted at Robert. "Robert, I'm just mad at you. How can you really go find someone else? He's a bitch. Are you sure you want to be with him? Are you sure you want to break up with me and choose this sick bastard?" Robert slapped him 3 meters away. "I won't allow you to say that about him." John fell to the ground spitting blood. James cried, and Dad Ada ran over and said, "I'm not a good person." Robert raised his hand again. James flinched. Robert paused, thinking that this was an omega. So I only slapped him 1 meter away. 25. In the car, I leaned on Robert's shoulder and said in a depressed tone, "I don't want to go to the hospital." So Robert took me home and applied the medicine to me personally. After applying the medicine, I continued to feel depressed. I don't want to go back to the dormitory. John bullies me every day, and I can't beat him. Robert felt very distressed. He immediately made a phone call and asked his men to give John a beating the next day. It was natural for me to stay at Robert's house. I stayed there for 2 months. Robert picks me up from school every day. He is very ostentatious and has all kinds of luxury cars. As time went by, there was a lot of discussion in the school. I heard that he saw that his roommate's partner was rich, so he secretly stole her away. That upper department student John is really miserable being backstabbed by someone like this. You can figure it out with your toes. Where did the rumor come from? I don't care. Anyway, I'm the one who's happy. 26. After another cloud and rain, Robert hugged me and absorbed my pheromones. I pushed him. Stop biting my neck. My clothes can't cover it anymore. Robert responded vaguely, but didn't move his head away. Take another breath. My waist is so sore from sitting on it every time. I want to be on top from now on. Robert paused after hearing this and looked up at me. Is it not possible to not let you use your strength? I have been teaching you for so long. Robert is now a qualified lover. She is still strong in bed. Don't like being pressured. Me, I will check out of the dormitory tomorrow and rent a house outside the school. Robert, why don't you just stay at my place? I said, it's not good. John calls me a mistress every day at school. Now my classmates are talking about me. Robert sat up with a gloomy look on his face. I will go and warn him tomorrow so that he won't dare to talk anymore. He does what he says. The next day, he put the man in a sack and beat him. After beating the guy up, Robert felt refreshed. Urged me to pack up my dormitory things and move. 27. I haven't been back to the dormitory for a long time. My desktop is a mess. The clothes in the closet were also torn. I thought there was no one in the dormitory. John suddenly opened the door and walked in. Are you feeling very proud now? I looked over. John had a bruise on the corner of his lip. His expression was also slightly gloomy. You were my bootlicker before, but now you're against me for your sake. You sick bastard. Have you had enough of pretending to be weak and pitiful? After saying, John slammed a plastic bag into my face. Even if you like pretending so much, then I'll let you pretend more realistically. A lot of yellow dust flew into my face. I stumbled back. I realized later that this was a mixture of pollen and some substance. John had a happy smile on his face. Didn't you claim that you were allergic to pollen and that it was so serious that you could die? Come on, I want to see if you can die. At this time, James also opened the dormitory door and walked in. John, your roommates have been sent away. They won't be back anytime soon. John patted his head lovingly. So good. Pollen triggers my asthma. I started coughing violently. At the same time, a large number of horrific red rashes appeared on the body. James raised his chin and said, let me tell you, I got all this pollen. I just can't stand you and others bullying the seniors. Humph. I retreated to the balcony in embarrassment. With shaking hands, he pulled out the medicine bottle from his pocket. John was stunned and immediately ran over to grab my medicine. However, I turned around and threw the medicine bottle off the balcony. John looked up at me in shock. I laughed and said, you're going to regret this. 20. When I was a child, while other children were running and playing outside, I could only sit in a room filled with sophisticated instruments, quietly looking out the window, distracted, in front of his younger son who was born with disabilities. My parents chose to focus all their attention on my brother. They only come to see me when they have free time. Give me care and love for a short while. Then he left without mercy. One day, when I was young, I was attracted by the fragrance. He reached out of the window and picked a branch of osmanthus. I stayed in the ICU for 3 days and 3 nights. After waking up, my mother hugged me and cried with red eyes. He kept shouting, Xiaobao, Xiaobao. She didn't go anywhere that time. Instead, he stayed by my bedside for 2 whole months. Then I understood. Only crying children get candy. I like eating candy. Robert has begun to love me. But I want more. 29. I can't remember how long I was unconscious. When I woke up, my brother was frying beside my bed. You are so independent. You didn't live in the villa you were given. You ran to squeeze into the dormitory and didn't let my brother's people protect you from all sides. Why are you so disobedient? Akumpan President. She cried so hard that her face was covered with snot and tears. Me, get out of here. My brother was shocked. He immediately called a doctor over to ask about my condition. I was told that my life was no longer in danger. He breathed a sigh of relief and said in a heavy tone, Mom was scared by you and fainted. She hasn't recovered yet. Dad is watching over there. The 2 people who hurt you have been arrested now. Don't be afraid, little treasure. I'm here for you. I blinked slowly. Question, where's Robert? You mean the guy who brought you to the hospital? He almost went crazy when you were being treated, and the noise was really loud. Afterwards, I transferred you to a private hospital. He came over, but I thought he was dangerous and didn't let him in. I fell silent. 30. At this moment, there is a sound of rain outside the window and the air is damp and cool. My brother got up and closed the window. Not knowing what he saw, he asked, Did Xiaobao get into trouble? But it's okay if I get into trouble. My brother sat back down on the bed and held my hand against his cheek. Tolerantly said, Brother will solve it for you. I slapped him in the face. That's my boyfriend, let him in. My brother's face was livid when he left. But he came back in the evening. He threw a stack of documents in front of me. Your family doesn't agree with you being with this person. Reason. My brother was heartbroken. The reason is that he is very dangerous. On the surface, he is a real estate developer, but behind the scenes, he is involved in the shady industry. Do you know how powerful his underground power is? Besides, he looks like he can kill you with one punch. A simple, weak, and beautiful alpha like you. You'll have no place to cry if you get abused in the future. In short, I don't agree. 31. I only have one sentence. If you don't agree, I will never talk to you again. My brother had a dark face. He slammed the door and left. In the middle of the night, Robert came. I was in a daze. I felt like someone was holding my hand and kissing it. Your brother is right. I failed to protect you. I am not worthy of you. It's only after being with you that I understand what love feels like. Michael, I've fallen for you in my life. I still feel a little weak. I didn't open my eyes. Just listen quietly to Robert's whispers. I went for a checkup today and found out that I'm pregnant. It's a month old. You're still young, so it's okay even if you don't want it. I'll give birth to the baby and raise it myself. I opened my eyes. He sat up in shock from his dying illness. Show me the ultrasound report. Robert looked confused. You didn't sleep? I repeated, show me the list. Robert studied my expression. It seemed to confirm that I didn't mean to object. Give me the report. I watched it quietly for 2 minutes and couldn't help but say, it must have happened that time. Robert, which time? Me, the time I ate coffee beans. I said it would be nice if it tasted like milk. Robert was laughing breathlessly then. That depends on whether you have the ability. Now it seems so. 32. The first thing after being discharged from the hospital. It's a formal meeting with the parents. Robert simply and roughly took a photo of the marriage proposal gift list. We can get engaged first. These are my sincerity. I glanced. I didn't see it clearly. I only saw the first line saying, a private island. At first, my parents did not agree. But after knowing Robert was pregnant, my suspicion of his complicated background finally disappeared. My mother was all smiles at the end. Put the family heirloom jade in Robert's hand. Michael has had poor health since childhood. I am relieved to find such an excellent partner like you. My brother heard the news and rushed back from the company that night. He was crying loudly downstairs. Mom and Dad, are you crazy? How can my brother be with such a rude person? There was a lot of fuss. Finally, my dad asked the security guard to chase them away. In the room, I rested my head on Robert's arm. I asked him, why didn't you tell me you wanted to propose marriage before you came here? Unhappy, Robert said, I'm just impatient and want to settle down with you as soon as possible. Brother has done my job, what should I do now? I gave Robert a small smile. He seemed to be bewitched and couldn't help but come over and kiss me. Lips and tongues intertwined. Robert mentioned another thing in a hoarse voice. John said during the interrogation that you dropped the bottle off the balcony yourself. My expression paused. Robert raised his head, his pupils dark. Is it true? I turned my head away and lowered my eyes and said, I don't understand what my brother is saying. Robert pinched my jaw and made me look at him again. Yellow-haired guy said you're a green tea, but how come I like you so much? Robert kissed me on the lips again. Whether it's true or not, I don't want you to do something that would hurt yourself. I just want you to know that even if you're not hurt, I still feel sorry for you. If you don't cry, I'll give you candy too. 33. John's family came to see me, but at that time, I was busy with the repertoire for the final exam. So we didn't meet. No letter of apology was received. Plus, my brother hired a famous lawyer. As expected, both were sentenced to 3 years. I heard they were sent to the same prison. They became a pure prison couple. No more words. Congratulations, 99. 34. Robert was in her 4th month of pregnancy. We had a big wedding in England. No certificate. Mainly because I am 1 year younger. We plan to make up for it as soon as we graduate. There was a small incident during the wedding. Let's not talk about my brother crying bitterly. The white-haired priest mistook Robert for an alpha. Treated me as an omega. The guests were whispering. Really? This is the first time I've seen such a tall and strong omega. He has been like a pretty doll since he was little, so it's not surprising that he made a mistake. The priest smiled kindly and said, the world's least omega and the world's least alpha, aren't you a perfect match? I lowered my eyes and put the ring on Robert's finger. Robert and Michael are a perfect match. Extra, grow old together. Robert was in her 9th month of pregnancy. Michael has already started preparing the things needed for confinement. Things like nursing pajamas and confinement socks. I bought a lot of them off and on. As a result, after giving birth, Robert just lay in bed for a day. I couldn't sit still on the 3rd day. Take off your slippers and put on your suit. He went to discuss business in high spirits. Michael, holding a fleece windproof confinement hat and looking at the empty bed, said, the child is a beautiful little boy. His nickname is David. He is very lively even when he is only a few months old. Michael approached. He would grab his father's fingers and laugh happily. When he was just born, Robert tried breastfeeding. He thinks the bite hurts and is unwilling to feed, making the child eat milk powder with a sour face. So all the excess milk went into his father's mouth. Fortunately, even if I drink milk powder, the little guy is also white and plump, as handsome as Michael, as healthy as Robert. For 3 years after marriage. The thing Robert looks forward to most every day is going home for dinner. He always opened the door feeling exhausted. Then he threw himself on Michael and said, "Baby, give me some pheromones to smell." At this time, Michael would hold his head gently. It releases a rich scent of datura flowers, surrounding him from all angles. Why? Robert sighed comfortably. It seems like the skin has unfolded. And when he woke up in the morning, he looked at Michael's sleeping face. Robert constantly experiences the true meaning of the saying, a husband's appearance is his wife's glory. Michael became famous early. The first concert after graduation became an instant hit. A video of him playing the D major violin concerto went viral online. The young man was wearing a French stand-up collar shirt, playing the zither with his eyes closed, and the silver threads embroidered on his cuffs were gleaming. Standing on the high platform, he has a slender figure, tall and handsome. Everyone who sees it says it looks beautiful. I am so happy to be able to marry a who is so beautiful and gentle. Robert felt that this was also the good deeds of his ancestors. On Michael's 25th birthday, already a particularly famous violinist, at the birthday party, his mother suddenly became sentimental and began to wipe away her tears. When you were a child, fortune tellers said that you were doomed and would not live past 25. Now, seeing you standing here in good health, this is the happiest day for your mother. Robert frowned and said, "Which charlatan calculated this? It's not accurate at all." But I don't know if there will really be a disaster this year. Or is it simply that when you become famous you are more likely to be surrounded by gossip? Michael's reputation was inexplicably ruined and many people were criticizing him. They said he was only famous because of his looks and he played the violin terribly. The bad apple of the violin world. He looks like a dead pretty boy. I don't know how he got famous. What a lousy violinist. Go get some treatment for the short-lived bastard and stop insulting music. Michael looked at it and smiled. He still plays his piano in peace and quiet. As a result, while playing the piano, he vomited blood in the piano room. Michael is sick. Robert found the netizen who said he would die young. He broke the other's ribs fiercely. If you dare to curse him again, I will really kill you. Afterwards, Robert tidied up his appearance. He touched Michael's face. Michael grabbed the wrist. The smell of blood. Michael looked at him quietly. Didn't I tell you to avoid doing dangerous things? Robert said, if you get better soon, I won't do it. Michael was seriously ill this time. Although every time he went to the hospital, his condition was serious. But Robert always had a bad feeling. A few days later, the test results were confirmed. Malignant tumor. Terminal illness. After learning that the success rate of the operation was only 30%, Robert chose conservative treatment. In a month's time, Michael's condition began to decline rapidly. He was even put on a ventilator. Robert tried his best. I have been running around for several days and have looked for all kinds of experts. Even a few white hairs have grown. But it was of no use. The only option is surgery. Robert felt it was a punishment. He lived too recklessly and arrogantly in the first 20 years of his life. So punish him for falling in love with the delicate and fragile Michael. He was constantly worried, running around, and suffering for his body. He loves Michael. I'm going crazy in love. 7. The night before surgery. Michael, who had been in a coma for a long time, suddenly woke up. He looked painful and vomited blood. He grabbed Robert's hand tightly and said he had something to say. After I die, you can't look for? The sticky blood covered his pale neck. He had a hideous face. For the first time in my life, I no longer looked like Michael, but like a paranoid evil spirit. I'm not your first love, but if I'm the last one, you can't find another one. You can't remarry. Otherwise, I will not let you go even if I become a ghost. Robert held his shaking hand. He comforted her over and over again. Don't worry, I won't leave. What are you talking about dying? If you were dead, I would just get a gun from the basement and kill myself. Michael shook his head, spelling out the words with difficulty. No, yes, David. David has everything I left for him, but you don't. Robert said, baby, the road to the underworld is lonely. I can't bear to see you go alone. I feel bad. Michael cried. Too many tears overflowed from the corners of his eyes. Robert buried himself in him, his shoulders shaking slightly. Michael, before you, I never knew what it felt like to be loved, what it felt like to have my heart moved. So you are my first love. Don't be afraid, baby. I only love you in this life. The operation lasted overnight. When it was just getting light, his mother is already preparing for Michael's funeral. Robert sat alone in the chair. It stood there motionless, like a sculpture. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the door of the operating room finally opened. Robert heard footsteps coming out one after another. Inform all the family members. The expert took off his mask and said with sweat on his forehead, fortunately, the operation was successful. The 25-year-old was robbed. Everything is getting better slowly. Michael never had another serious illness. After 26 years old, even asthma rarely occurs. But Robert always wakes up. He hugged Michael in fear and made sure he was still breathing. Michael turned over and hugged back, patting Robert's back gently, coaxing, don't be afraid. I've always been. So Robert returned to the dream with the scent of datura flowers. Every night after that, they fell asleep in each other's arms. 10 years, 20 years. The 6 seedlings gradually recovered. The two spent countless spring, summer, autumn, and winter together. From then on, life will be smooth and happy.